prosperous nation, it is also critical that we lower the crushing tax burden on our workers and on our businesses. The United States has the highest tax rate on business anywhere in the world, and we want to bring it down to one of the lowest because we want more growth, more jobs, and higher pay, and that's what's going to happen.
President Trump making his case this week again for tax reform. This as Senate Democrats also this week outlined their conditions for a bipartisan plan. But someone here says American taxpayers are better off if Republicans don't work with Democrats on this one. Are they right or wrong? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus to find out with Steve Forbes, Elizabeth McDonald, Bill Baldwin, John Tamny, and we're proud to welcome Jessica Tarloff. Good to see you, Jesse.
Thanks for having me.
Steve, the Democrats are just coming out with the same old formulas of taking more money away from the private sector and giving it to the government. Is there room in that formula for compromise?
Absolutely not, David. This is a waste of time. The Democrats just want the old redistribution, soak the rich, transfer payment philosophy. The only way they're ever going to compromise is when they did 30 years ago after Ronald Reagan thrashed them in the 1984 election on the tax issue. Democrats came back later and they've got a good tax bill. But right now, the Republicans got to go on their own and recognize when you lower the burden on people, you get more growth, more jobs, more opportunity.
Jessica, we can put up on the screen the terms that the Democrats laid out, the tax reform conditions. Among them is don't cut taxes for the wealthiest 1%. Not that I'm standing up for the 1%, but I just want to point out the top 1% pay 40%, just about 40% of all the income tax. Isn't there a limit to how much you can tax these people?
Well, not if you're Bernie Sanders, but I think if you are a sane Democrat, there is a limit. We do know Bill.
So you're not in favor of these conditions?
I'm not in favor of putting conditions out there and then saying there will be no negotiation past this. Obviously, we know where Democrats stand on the 1%. They would like to tax them more. Steve is completely correct that they do like the redistribution model. But I think that looking ahead and thinking about 2018 and 2020, when we know that the American public was promised tax cuts and that they want them, that we need to deal with Republicans on this so we can at least have a stamp on the bill.
Yeah, but John, you know, there's so much talk about how we all need bipartisan, but maybe there's some areas where you shouldn't have bipartisan agreement, where one side is wrong and the other side is right.
Well, to paraphrase our former president, Barack Obama, elections have consequences. What a grave mistake, then, for the Republicans to embrace the Democrats on the way to a bipartisan bill. We can almost be assured that such a bill would do little to nothing to reduce the tax burden on the American people. If there were ever a time for them to assert they're a majority loudly, it's now to reduce the penalties on work and investment as much as possible. That does not involve the Democrats.
And Emac, when you go back to what happened during the Reagan era, he had across-the-board tax cuts, rich and poor, and look what happened as a result. The poorest 20% did just about as well as the richest 20%. So it works for both the poor and the rich.
Yeah, look at those numbers, double digit for the poor, their income going up. And, you know, the federal tax revenues also went up by about 20%. You know, the Democrat Party was never like this. I come from a long line of Democrats in my family. Reagan, my mother was a Reagan Democrat. What the Democrats have failed to realize right now, they've really gone off the deep end, by the way. 90% of all businesses in this country, according to IRS data, report at the regular personal income tax rate. Their personal income, 60%.
So that 1% includes a lot of small businesses.
Yeah, and so those businesses will get really slammed by the likes of Bernie Sanders and the "you didn't build that" crowd. And why did those numbers go up under Reagan? Because jobs were created.
Yeah, and Bill, my dad also was a Reagan Democrat, and he was convinced in the end that the Democratic formula didn't work, but Reagan's formula did.
Well, I'm pretty sympathetic to John Tamny on shrinking the government, but I'm very sympathetic to the Democrats on some important tax issues. I don't think that millionaires need a tax cut in order to get motivated to get out of bed in the morning. I think if you want to stimulate the economy, the way to do it is to give targeted tax breaks to the working poor and to their employers.
All right, we haven't convinced them, showing that all groups rise as a result of across-the-board cuts. But, Steve, there is a vacuum here. What Democrats have done is kind of a favor to Republicans by laying out these unworkable, a manifesto, if you will, against tax cuts. They give room for the president to do what Reagan did, which is go directly to the people. Back in 1981, when he outlined his tax cuts, a lot of people didn't like it for the same reason Dems don't like it this time. Here's a little soundbite of what he said to the American people in a primetime address. Take a listen.
Are you entitled to the fruits of your own labor? Or does government have some presumptive right to spend and spend and spend?
Steve, if Trump did that now, doesn't that message still resonate with the American people?
Oh, absolutely, David. The American people know they're overtaxed. Everything from state taxes, sales taxes, Social Security taxes, income taxes. They've had enough. And that's why the Republicans made a huge mistake not leading with big tax cuts. That's what they should do now. They get this economy moving. By golly, a lot of these other political problems for Trump fade away.
And Jessica, we keep going back to the past. I want to go to the millennial generation, which you're a part of. I mean, the fact is that if you ask young people who could do better with their cash, is it the Silicon Valley folks, is it Mark Zuckerberg, or is it government bureaucrats? I think they'd see things the same way Reagan does in that regard, don't you?
Well, I'm not sure completely. I mean, millennials don't talk that much about Ronald Reagan. They
no,
do,
but,
know about the
hold
Bill
on a second.
Clinton era,
Wait. Specifically, if you were to put money in the hands of the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs, or in the hands of government bureaucrats, who do you think would do better with that cash?
I think that they would say that they themselves or the entrepreneurs, representatives, our generation, would do better.
That's all Reagan was saying.
I know that's all Reagan was saying, and there have been a lot of Democrat presidents where people have done exceptionally well under as well, which we need to acknowledge. I would also say that Donald Trump imitated Bernie Sanders' populism, economic populism on the campaign trail. Donald Trump voters, his core base, also think that the millionaires and the billionaires get to keep too much of their money. So it's not just a clear-cut Democrat.
I think it's a Republican problem, John, more than a Democrat, because we know what the Democrats stand for, and they just reiterated that this week. But Republicans have to come out and say clearly what they stand for with regard to government as opposed to the private sector.
Well, it should be about freedom, and I reject this notion that it's not about motivating the millionaires. That's not the point. The rich, by virtue of being rich, have excess funds that they don't consume. That is how businesses are formed. There are no businesses, there are no jobs without investment and savings. So when you cut the taxes on the rich, you free up capital that lifts the boats of everyone.
And Emac, I understand that Bernie got a lot of votes from young people. He generated support tremendously. But when you put it to young folks that way, that, you know, we know how bureaucrats spend their money and waste their time and do things that don't work. We also know how Mark Zuckerberg and the young entrepreneurs in this country do tremendous work and have created amazing wealth. In whose hands would you prefer to have that money?
Mark Zuckerberg, you know, you mentioned Bernie Sanders, talking about millionaires and billionaires. This week, we saw retirement accounts for people of all political stripes go up. IRAs are up into the six figures right now because of a booming stock market and capitalism. Listen, the problem with the income tax code right now, and Steve has said this too, the American people are fundamentally honest. They've got integrity. They want to do right. They want to be, I think, good. The income tax code makes more liars out of people than golf. And the deduction section has inspired more fiction writing than what's in the entire Library of Congress.
Yeah.
It's immoral what this system, the tax system, is doing to the American people.
I think you've got a point. We'll leave it at